Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our live event this evening. I'm Julia O'Hara with USF Housing and Residential Education, and I'm joined this evening by Dr. Andrew Johnson, Director for Operations and Outreach with USF Housing and Residential Education. And tonight we're going to be reviewing all of the information regarding fall 2020 closing and spring 2021 opening. So ask us your questions from wherever you're watching, and I will ask your questions to Dr. Johnson here on the show. We also have a special announcement regarding summer and fall spring 2020-21 housing applications, so make sure you stay with us until the end of the broadcast. So if you're joining us from Microsoft Teams, you can type your questions by clicking Ask a Question to the right of your screen. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can just type your questions in the comments and I'll see them here and ask Dr. Johnson. So Dr. Johnson, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I mean, it's a brisk evening here in Florida. We don't get a lot of these, so
correct.
Sleeves are out.
Yeah, it's us Floridians. It's like a special. We have our 3 jackets, so we have to break one of them out. I like that USF one you got there.
Thank you. You always got to represent the place you're proud to work.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump into some questions. First, what we're going to do is talk about fall. We already have one question from a viewer, Mary. Mary, thank you so much for your question about spring opening, and we're going to get to that. But first, let's talk about fall closing, because before we open for spring, we do need to close for fall. Yeah. So let's talk about the timeline. When do residence halls close for the fall 2020 term?
Great question. So residence halls close at 12 p.m. on December 11th. And so those would be the time in which, if you do not have break stay, then you would need to go ahead and pack up what you need for the break and take it on home with you or wherever you're headed. Some people go on vacation, some people go home, some people visit friends, but wherever you're headed, that's a good time to make sure that you're all packed up and ready to go. So.
Great, and I'm going to drop the link to the fall closing webpage on all the different Facebook streams and here in Microsoft Teams, so that everyone has access to that if you haven't seen it yet. The next question I have is about break stay. I know we just chatted about this, but can residents stay in the residence hall over the break? And that is an option, and is it still an option now for someone who hasn't submitted that request?
Right. So great question. So the let me just touch on the web closing webpage. That is a wealth of information. We try to anticipate every question or every need that you may have and answer it on that page. So I encourage everyone to strongly review it before you head home, or at least before we close on December 11th. With regards to break stay, we do have a number of buildings that are open during that time. Horizon, our Holly apartment complex, our Magnolia apartment complex, and Poplar Hall are all open during the winter break. The deadline to request winter break stay was earlier today at 4 p.m. However, there are some extenuating circumstances, right? That just seems to be the era in which we live in this year. But if it is that you missed that deadline and feel that there are some extenuating circumstances in which you need break stay, then we encourage you to visit your residence life coordinator and talk with that person to help navigate the process. So, but yes, we do offer break stay. We do have some residents that actually never leave us. They will live here all 4 years without a break, and so we always welcome them through our holiday periods. And do our best to make sure that they still feel connected to the community, even though we have most of our community at home or with family or friends or wherever they travel. So.
Right. Thank you, Andy. And I think that's a good point to make, that we do offer break stay between each term. So if it's something that you're going to be interested in, that's something to keep into account when picking your room, maybe picking a building that will be a break stay building in the future.
Absolutely, especially as we have room selections happening in February for our current residents or current students, and then new students in March. Start reviewing that information. If you know if you have that need, start thinking about that now, so that way you can make sure you form your roommate groups appropriately and get ready to get settled in for the whole year.
Right. So the next question I have is about residents remembering to take home the essentials with them for winter break. So for those that, will be leaving for those few weeks, if maybe they've already left, but hopefully they remember their essentials. What are those things that it's really important for residents to bring with them because they're not going to be able to be back in their hall until spring?
Yeah, so I think I think that varies by each individual, right? Some people may have their home television with them and they may need that for the 3 or 4 weeks. It could be medications, it could be certain foods, things like that. So I think it varies by person, but make sure that you pack like you're going on a vacation, a 3-week vacation. So make sure you have your toothbrush and your deodorant and whatever you need to be comfortable for that time period. If you've signed up for a winter session, make sure that you have your laptop or your iPad or whatever device you need to be successful in the online winter session. But I think the biggest thing to remember about what you need to take out of your room is perishable items. Making sure that your room's picked up and tidied up before you head out. That the garbage has been taken out, and that way you return to a room that's nice and neat and clean and fresh and ready to go, just the way you left it when you get back in January.
Absolutely. Great points. And all of that information, like we said, is listed on the fall closing webpage, those reminders. And this is also listed on the fall closing webpage, but just for those that are tuning in and as a reminder, is there anything special students should do to prepare their room for winter break, considering they'll be gone for over a month? We touched on that on the perishables. Is there anything else that we missed on that one?
We always recommend people to unplug things from the walls just to reduce any kind of risk of fire hazard or anything like that. If you have a small refrigerator, try to go ahead and defrost it in advance before you leave. Because I have seen where some folks will open it up and then they'll just let it set, and then when they get back, there is a watery, puddly mess. And so if you can take it and do it, about 48 hours in advance is good. Put down a couple of towels, or move it to a shower stall or something along that lines. Then that helps. But I think just common sense things, making sure that you're safe and taking those types of practices. So.
Absolutely. Good point. No one wants a puddle and rotten food when they come back from their winter break. Not good. So this is another good point to keep in mind. A lot of people who may not have had a roommate in the fall may be getting a roommate for the spring. So what are some things to keep in mind to prepare for a new roommate in the spring with your room, preparing that, whether it's a traditional room or even a suite or an apartment? What are some things to keep in mind with that?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do is just impressions matter, right? We try to always make a good impression and take the best step forward all the time. Just simple things about picking up your room, making sure. So let's start with a traditional, right? Making sure that things aren't on the other person's bed, right? That you've given them enough space, that you're not using their drawers or their desk for anything. You save them a little closet space, right? Because this is someone you're going to be living with for the next 4 months or so in the spring term. And so just a little common courtesy, how you want to be treated by others, and treat them that way. So kind of the golden rule is always a good thing. I think that the next step would be to make sure you reach out to them, right? This is someone that you're going to be sharing some space with and hopefully becomes friends with, and it's always helpful to start that relationship out on the right foot. So reach out. Hi, my name is Andy. I'm going to be roommate with you this coming spring. What are you into? What are your passions? What are your hobbies? What are your dislikes? I think a lot of times, we see a lot of roommate conflicts because people aren't open about their expectations or their needs. And so having those open and honest conversations well in advance can set you up for long-term success. So I still remember back when I moved into my college room, and my roommate had already moved in, and so I was late to the party, and you know, he was great, and we talked it out real quick on what are some things that, you know, he was expecting from me, I would expect from him. You know, simple things like, hey, we clean up the room once a week. We make sure that we aren't leaving trash and you know, toothpaste all over the sink. You know, I don't use your stuff, you don't use my stuff. You know, things like that. You know, unless we talk about it. And we had one of the greatest roommate relationships. As a matter of fact, he was one of my groomsmen at my wedding. And so you never know where those people are going to come from. And so he's a great guy, and I still talk to him to this day. So, and that was a very long time ago. So
I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people have that theme. If you talk to anybody who had the opportunity to live on campus, just so many great relationships that come out of that opportunity, whether it be your roommate or someone that lives in your hall. It's just an awesome time to meet people. And you're right in communication being super important when you do start those roommate relationships.
I just remember this. We actually lived together twice. We lived together in our senior year as well.
Nice.
So, and the only reason we didn't live together in our junior years is because I was assigned as an RA to a different building than he wanted to live. But yeah.
Right. Works
so,
well.
It does. It does. He's a good guy. So.
Awesome. So let's talk about steps residents need to take before winter break if they're not returning in the spring. So we talked about some obvious ones about perishables, you know, packing everything that you need to with you, but what other steps do residents need to take if they're checking out and not returning? Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that the only reason that they're choosing not to return for the spring term is that they're graduating or some other academic endeavor, right? That, you know, they're going on a study abroad, something that would have to take them away from our living, you know, community. And so, so if they are choosing that, the first thing to do is just make sure that you submit your cancellation. And so that's really important because that tells us that you are actually not coming back to the residence halls. The next step obviously is just packing up your room. Make sure you take everything with you, that you are, you know, tidying up before you go, that you're not leaving any trash, things like that in the room. And then the last step is making sure that you turn in your key at one of our service desk locations. So either in JPH, Juniper Poplar Hall, or in Holly M. Now I know that we have adjusted our hours this year to adjust for some of our campus environment. And if it is that you have to check out outside of one of our open times, we actually are allowing students to mail in their keys. But there are two very important items I want to comment on with regards to mailing in your keys. Number one is please make sure you mail them in a padded envelope. We get keys every single year for whatever reason that students are just putting them in a regular old paper envelope, and by the time we get them, because they are sharp and they are heavy, they are gone. And unfortunately, that because we didn't get them back, that is a key recurring charge, and they can be quite costly. That's not something we want to do, but that's a cost that we have to then pass on. So please padded envelope if you're mailing your keys back. The second thing is that we need to receive them back by December 11th. All right, that is the closing day. And so keys are for non-returning residents are due by that day. And so we have a number of processes that we have to do afterwards to audit the keys, make sure that they're appropriately accounted for, and get ready for the new semester. So, returning keys are only for those students who are permanently checking out and leaving the residence halls. So if you are coming back for the spring, you don't have to do anything. You hold on to those keys, enjoy your 3.5 weeks of vacation, and we will see you when you get back in January. So you just bring those keys back with you when you come.
Absolutely. So what you just said, Andy, is all on the closing webpage. So we have included the address for anyone that's wanting to use that option for the mail-in keys. Also, all the information you just said about the padded envelope is on there as well. So I've dropped those links in all of the Facebook feeds and on Teams here. Great. So I am looking through our fall section and everything on the fall closing webpage. We went through a lot of the details that make closing unique. And the next thing that we're talking about is spring opening, which that webpage was launched this morning for with all of that information. So I know a lot of people were looking for that, and we're really excited to get that information out to everybody, and thanks everyone for their patience in that. So Mary's first question before we even started was, when can they move back in for spring? So that is also my first question for you that I had planned. So if you want to talk about the timeline for move in for spring 21.
Yeah, fantastic. Mary, thank you so much for your question and your patience as we move through the closing period items. So move in for spring will be similar, but not exactly the same as we did for the fall. And I say that in the fact that we want to make sure that we are having a safe residential community as we possibly can. And we're going to do that through our sign up process. And so starting tomorrow, right, Julie, I believe it's tomorrow, right? We will open our our returning sign up process, right? So you will log into your housing portal. You will choose either January 8th, which is the Friday, January 9th, which is the Saturday, or January 10th, which is the Sunday, and select the time slot that works for you based on your location. And so you will go ahead and sign up for there. We are limiting it for each day so that we can move everybody in as efficiently as possible. Most of our returning residents, they will just get checked in and then head on about their business. However, we do have one big change for move-in this January. In the fall, we required that everyone bring a negative test result back for COVID-19 within a certain, I think, 10 or 14-day window. This January, our colleagues at Student Health Services will be providing everyone a self-swab COVID test. And we will have a number of Student Health Services professionals at our 3 check-in locations, and they will be administering the test. So it's super simple. You will get the test box. It will already be pre-labeled, ready to go. You will do the swab in your nose, stick it back in the thing, turn it back over to the health professional, and then you are all set to check in and get your stuff moved in for the spring term. So trying to make it as quick and as painless as possible, but it definitely helps with our surveillance strategies. One of the ones we've been doing is environmental testing in random locations. And so just one more surveillance strategy to help keep our campus community as safe as possible.
Thanks, Andy, for talking about the COVID testing. That was going to be one of my questions. And we had a question right when you began talking about it from a viewer, Elizabeth, asking if returning students will have to take a COVID test prior to returning. So not prior, they'll be provided and take it in the hall, like Andy just mentioned. So thank you, Elizabeth, so much for your question. And thank you, Andy, for that answer.
You're welcome. I know Mary asked what days were we moving folks in, but I wanted to give so much more to it.
The more information, the better. I think that everyone can agree that that's a good thing. So you did talk about the appointment times. So let's go back to that and talk about that a little bit more. That's going to be accessible in the housing portal tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Yes.
And they're going to be hour-and-a-half check-in appointments. So let's talk about why those appointments are set in place and why it's so important to make sure that your move-in helpers leave the buildings after that hour-and-a-half.
No, that's a great question. And so one of the reasons that we have scheduled time slots is to help manage the flow of traffic, right? Imagine when a theme park first opens up and everyone is ready to go, right? They're excited, they're eager to get back in there or experience the park. We are similar to that, right? And we have a lot of folks that will show up right at the beginning, and then we'll have a slowdown period. So what we're looking for to help manage the process, to make sure we get everybody checked in as efficiently as possible and get a COVID test issued to them, is that we will have the check-in times, right? We will still maintain all of our social distancing and safety guidelines that we've been adhering to since the beginning of fall. Limited number of individuals in the elevator, right? So if it's you and your 2 move-in assistants, or your roommate and yourself, right? Those are people of your same party. so maintaining elevator status, and containing that, as well as maintaining 6 feet social distancing, wearing your mask. I mean, these are all things that we've had to think of, as we are talking about the returning process. And so part of that was signing up for time slots so that we could make sure that we have enough space between everyone and that we wouldn't have massive lines wrapping around our buildings as people are trying to check in. We definitely don't want that. So we want everybody to have a really great experience. And when you sign up for a time slot, it's based on when you're arriving, right? You may have a parent who works overnight, right? I know my mom did. She worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. and she wasn't able to take me at 9:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning to move back in, right? She needed a couple hours of sleep. So a 3 p.m. time slot worked much better for me and my family. So it's really all depends on personal preference as well. So we have 3 great days. There's I think 4 or 5 different time slots per day that you can sign up for. We have a couple of hundred folks per time slot, per location, right? So we're going to have a lot of space and a lot of flexibility in that. And so so it'll open up tomorrow, like you said, at 9 a.m. But that's one of our biggest reasons, is to make sure that we are being as safe as possible as we are moving folks back in. You asked me another question. What was your other question?
I was asking about if they're not done within the hour and a half, why is it important for them to try to maintain that hour and a half? And just for those that are watching that haven't had a chance to review the opening webpage yet, those appointment times are 9 to 10:30, 11 to 12:30, 1 to 2:30, 3 to 4:30. And you will be able to access those appointments through the housing portal tomorrow at 9 a.m. And those are 2 move-in helpers that are permitted per resident. So Andy, going back to you, why is it important for the hour and a half maintaining that time slot for moving in so that we can keep, the right amount of people in the halls?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So, we have a pretty substantial residential population living with us this January. And if everybody brought 2 helpers and they stayed all day long, we could have anywhere from, 4,000 to 6,000 individuals in our halls and our buildings every single day. And so it goes back to maintaining the safety aspect of our halls and trying to get folks moved in as quickly as possible. So we do ask that that folks adhere to the 90 minutes. I know that a lot of folks will be residents will be able to just quickly move back in. They may have just taken a suitcase, a TV, and a backpack with them. But we'll have close to 700 new residents this spring, and so they'll have a little bit more, right? And so just making sure that we're being courteous, being good citizens of our residential community and our campus community, and just so as soon as you are able to get your items in, get settled, then we ask that the move-in assistance be to head on. Doesn't mean you can't leave, you don't have to leave campus. Doesn't mean you can't go to Target across the street or some other in place. Grab a bite to eat in one of our dining halls or one of our other restaurants on campus that are open. But we just ask that you go ahead and move on out of the residence hall so other folks can get moved in.
Thank you, Andy, for that clarification. That's really helpful. So let's talk about the logistics of checking in. So where are students and residents checking in?
Excellent question. So let's start with Juniper Poplar. It's going to be our easiest one, and then we'll go into some of our others. But Juniper Poplar and our Magnolia residents will be right there in JPH 1317, which is one of our multi-purpose rooms. I know that some students may not know where our multi-purpose rooms are because we haven't been able to hold a lot of activities and events this year. As a matter of fact, we haven't had, unfortunately, any. But they are back close to the laundry room in JPH. And so all of the JPH and Magnolia residents will need to check in with our staff and with Student Health Services upon arrival at your time. So you will head directly into 1317 or hop in the queue if there's a queue out in the hallway. But we want to get everybody in and checked in. So let me just reiterate, that is all new students and all current residents. So that is a change from our past, but we need to make sure that every resident passes through each of the check-in locations. So on the north side of campus, so Holly, Kosov, Beta, Castor, Maple, Cypress D, all of those residents will check in Holly J, which is right next to, in between Holly F and Holly G along Holly Drive. I know that's a lot of Hollies all in one time, but you know, it's the holiday season and we have a lot of holly jolly around here. So, so Holly J is for those residence halls. And for our residents of the village, you will be checking into Holly L. And so that is very, very important to note the two different locations. So one is on the south side of Holly Drive, Holly J, and one is on the north side, Holly L, which is on the north side of Holly Drive. Holly L is also directly across from Holly M, which is one of our service desk locations. So again, every resident, whether you're new or returning, will need to go through and check in at one of your appropriate locations. So.
Thanks, Andy. And we have some great maps too on the spring opening webpage that can clearly outline all the different locations that we just mentioned. And we have another question from Jamie about meal plans. When does meal plans officially start? Is it the 8th, 9th, or 10th?
Excellent question, Jamie. Thank you for asking it, because we have a pretty strong population that live on our meal plans. So normally, in a normal year, it starts on the day in which the residence hall open, and which is usually the Saturday. Our partners over in dining have extended it, and so meal plans will actually start on January 8th, which is the Friday. So as soon as you arrive on campus on January 8th, your meal plan is active and ready to go.
Thank you, Andy. And let's talk a little bit about those early arrivals. So obviously you are able to sign up for a January 8th appointment time if there's any available when you sign into the housing portal tomorrow morning. Is it possible for any residents to arrive earlier than that?
The only so while I would love to welcome all residents earlier than that, unfortunately we won't be ready yet. We have a select population of students who will be arriving a couple of days earlier, and they are typically going through some kind of university program such as orientation or preparing for athletic competition. And so we will not be able to welcome folks back just yet. We are eager, we are as excited as you are to come back earlier, but January 8th is where we will be all set up and we will be ready to go. If it is that you believe that there's some kind of extenuating circumstance where you cannot arrive after January 8th, that you feel like you need to arrive before that, then I would ask that you reach out to our housing team and at housing@usf.edu, or give us a call at 813-974-0001 and talk with one of our team members, and we can try to figure out what options may be available for you.
And Andy, this question from Bina online may also fall under that category, but opposite, after check-in hours. Bina says, my flight doesn't arrive until 5:30 on January 9th. How do I check in since it's later than the check-in time?
So Bina, I would ask that you go ahead and email us so that we know that when you're coming, and so that we can be prepared for you. I know that a lot of our students have late flights. They want to maximize their time with their families and friends and things like that, and we absolutely want that for them. But we also want to be able to welcome them at an appropriate time. So so we would ask that you go ahead and email us, let us know your situation, and so that way we can make sure that the appropriate staff is ready.
Right, and I'll reply on the thread here just to make sure that Bina has our contact information so they can let us know. So I am going through our questions here for the spring section. Let's see, is there, well, here's a question that we just got from Elizabeth actually about meal plans. I know this information is on our spring opening webpage. So if you don't know this off the top of your head, Andy, I can look this up. Elizabeth is asking, can students change their current meal plan, either upgrade or downgrade? If yes, when?
Absolutely. I would say that you should do it sooner than later. And it depends, I believe it depends on your meal plan type and your student status. I believe new students, so if you're brand new to the university, then you are limited, I believe, in what you can downgrade it to. There's a certain floor, but I believe you could absolutely change your meal plan up until I think the first week of school. I think it's add drop.
It's January 4th here. So on the spring opening page, all meal plan change requests can be submitted through USF Dining's website beginning January 4th through January 15th. You're correct. Add drop by 4 p.m. And the meal plan team will review the request and send a confirmation via email. So I'm going to send you this information directly, Elizabeth, and you.
I was only half right. I thought you could change it earlier than that.
Earlier than that, we met in the middle there.
I'll know for next time.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Elizabeth, for that question.
It's a great question.
And let's see. This is a question that we're getting. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Keep them coming. We're here to answer them tonight. Destiny is asking, with the COVID test, will they be able to take it back to their vehicle since it's self-administered, or will there be a section for them to take it? And will there be instruction provided as well?
So that's a really great question, right? We understand the need for privacy in certain for this. We are working to design space that an individual can go right there on site and administer the test themselves, right? So we're looking for some privacy areas and paneling that we can use to create those spaces. It also gives the opportunity, depending on the volume of folks flowing in, that if someone needs assistance, then our health professionals would be right there to help provide that guidance. And so we would prefer you to do it right there on site with us. And so we are trying to create that privacy space where you could take the 3 or 5 minutes or whatever time you need to go do it. And then you can turn it right back in and then you'll be done. So then you don't have to worry about coming back to turn it back in if you leave the space. So completely understand your question, your needs. We are working to that, and so at minimum we will have some kind of a privacy space where people can self-administer the test.
Thank you, Andy. And thank you, Destiny, for that question. That's a great question. So Andy, the questions that I have had about spring opening, I've gotten through them all, and we've gotten some great questions from the audience. Another one that I'll ask you, it's not on my list here, but just to give everyone watching some time to send in their questions before we wrap and we make our announcement. Do you have any advice that you would share to incoming students, maybe that weren't with us for this fall, but are starting with us here in the spring for the first time? What advice would you share with them to prepare for their college experience?
I think that I would share that we are still a strong community on this campus. There are still a significant number of residents living in our halls. There are still very caring professionals who are working very hard in the front of the house, providing services and working on creating that community, providing different types of events and things like that. The events look a little different. We can't hide that, but there's a strong desire there to make sure that every person feels welcome, feels safe, and feels as if they are a USF bull. Right. It's an interesting thing that a lot of our students who lived with us in the fall term were 100% online, but loved the independence of living in our residence halls. Right. As a matter of fact, that we were about 40% of our residential students were 100% online, and they still had a really great time living with us. Right. They still had a great time living with their roommates. What I've seen in some of the feedback that I've gotten is that, there are tight friendship groups that have formed And those friendship groups are the ones that are traveling in together around campus and doing things, in different platforms and settings that are just really developing lifelong friendships, right? Because it's going to be one of those things. And in 10 years from now, like, oh, do you remember when we lived together and we were dealing with this COVID thing? Do y'all remember COVID? It was kind of like MySpace when we get to that part of the future. But it's, do you remember all the great times that we had? It'll be one of those things, right? We have such incredible residents. They will have such an incredible bond with each other when we finally get past COVID-19. And so, life is out there. It's out there. My assistant vice president just recently sent both you and I a picture of as she was walking home from the, because her office is over in the residential communities, and she could see these lights coming from one of our community kitchens, and could see this resident in there cooking up a storm. She was by herself. She had her mask on. She was doing everything right and just absolutely cooking up a storm. And I don't know if that was just for her or if that was something she was taking to her roommate, or she was, had her small core group of friends that they've been sticking together, as a part of that party. But, life is out there. We have a great community. And so I would say be prepared for that, right? It's going to be a little different than it was 12 months ago, but it's going to still be a great experience. I would say from the university standpoint, we are still doing a lot of surveillance work. We are still testing surfaces. We are still maintaining our high cleaning standards. We are still trying to communicate and work as hard as we can behind the scenes to make sure that residential experience is unaffected. And so I think that those are some of the biggest things that I would impose to students, as advice. Be patient, be kind, be courteous, but it's going to be a slightly different experience. But I think in the end, it will still be an incredible memory.
Absolutely. Very well said, Andy. Thank you for that.
Had a little passion there. Sorry.
I know. Love it. I love that. So that is all the questions that I had prepared for you tonight. There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, that we're getting these questions online and via email too. So we do have a special announcement regarding the summer and fall application opening, if you'd like to give that to the audience.
Sure. We are super excited to announce that we are ready to open up our housing contract and application for the fall 2021-2022 academic year, as well as our summer 2021 summer B and all the rest of the summer terms. And so, like I just said, things are a little different, but we are still a strong residential community. And so our applications will be opening tomorrow at 1 p.m. to everyone. So if you are an admitted student and you are ready, we are ready to have you come back. We have missed all the residents who have decided to stay home this year, but know that we are geared up and we are excited, and we will still make this the best residential community that we possibly can. So I'm looking forward to starting to see applications and that strong desire continue into the summer and into the next fall. So tell all your friends, it's time. Let's get the applications in. Let's secure your space on campus. It's incredibly important experience for you as a new student or returning student. So I would also say it's do it early. That way you don't have to worry about it in January or February as we get into crunch time and are getting ready for our returning room selection, or into March when our new students select rooms. So take that little worry off your mind. Let's just get it out there and let's get it done. So
let's do it. Love it.
We're excited for you. So
awesome. So, but before we wrap though, Andy, we do have another question from Jamie. Before we end tonight, Jamie, thank you so much for the question. Jamie's student uses the floor kitchen to study in and finds it great. Are there any chances that the individual halls will open up more in the spring for those buildings' residents?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jamie. So the university has a COVID-19 task force, which is led by our Dean of Public Health. And she is incredibly well respected in her field and in the public health community. And so she continues to be connected with our local and state health officials and CDC guidance. And so we have that strong desire to open our spaces back up just like you are asking, but until we get to a place where it is safe enough to have group gatherings, where the university has moved into phase 3 of our reopening plan. Right now, we just can't have that, and this is one of the reasons. Unfortunately, I know students don't like to hear this and families don't like to hear this, but this is one of the reasons why we have some of the lowest numbers in positivity cases. I don't know if anybody remembers the Today Show news article that was talking about how USF has been doing incredible work in keeping our positivity case numbers low. And so I would ask just a little bit more patience. We're eager to open things back up just like you are. But if you could just be patient with us a little bit longer as we see things unfold and develop, and we'll start as quickly as we can. So.
And I think it's important to keep in mind also that while a lot of the common spaces inside are restricted at the moment, there are so many opportunities outside, especially in this gorgeous Florida weather, to safely gather in groups 6 feet apart. That we have, countless benches, tables that are available outside, as well as the recreational activities that are available outside as well, in addition to some common spaces some limited common spaces that are open in the halls right now. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Jamie just posted a comment. USF is doing a fabulous job keeping the numbers low. Thank you. And thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. We are trying so hard because it's a very tough and demanding position to be in, and thank you for that grace. So
absolutely, and we appreciate all the questions and comments that are coming in tonight. And that, I think, is a wrap, Andy, unless there's any other comments that you'd like to make on either closing or opening. And then I have just a couple of comments to make before we end.
I think the only two things to say is thank you so much for our students, our residents, our families, for continuing to put your trust and faith in the university. We are doing everything we can to make sure that the experience changes as little as possible, given our circumstances. And so thank you for that continued support and patience as we work through this together. The last thing is you get your applications in. It's time to apply. 1 o'clock tomorrow. System will be open in your housing portal. Go ahead and click the buttons. Let's get it, let's secure your space as soon as possible. So that's it for me.
Awesome. Well, thanks you everyone. So much, Andy, for joining us tonight. And I'll be posting all the links for the housing application tomorrow on social media and emailing that to residents as well. So don't forget to review all this information that we covered today on our closing and opening web pages. That is at usf.edu/housing, as well as the links posted wherever you're watching tonight. If you have any additional questions that weren't answered tonight, you can email us at housing@usf.edu or call us at 813-971-0001. And we will be hosting another Q&A about spring opening on Wednesday, January 6th at 6 p.m. Eastern. So we hope that you all can join us then. And until next time, go Bulls. Good night, everybody.